complete roadmap for data analysts for digital marketing to get your first job fast with minimal effort with no experience. So if you are someone that wants to break into data analytics and you don't have any experience, you don't have a degree, and you also don't have any connections, no internship lined up, then this is for you because that's exactly where I was about 3 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago. To be honest with you, I was driving Uber, and at the time I was averaging about $35 an hour before gas, before taxes, so you can take that out. And then my first job I landed, I had to essentially travel across the country to another state in the US, and I ended up making $25 an hour at that first job after studying for 3 months. And I took a pay cut because I was making more at Uber, to be completely honest. But obviously, in the long run, it worked out because now I'm charging almost $100 per hour for freelancing data analytics services on Upwork and also outside of that. And like I said, you can do it as well, and it just takes 3 months. That's exactly how long it took me, with no fluff, right? So essentially, you're here at the start with no knowledge, no experience, no connections. Um, and in 3 months' time, if you stick with this, then you can start applying for jobs and hopefully get that job that you want. So, the best part about one thing to note is that the best part about becoming a data analyst is that if you, let's just say, data analyst. So, the good thing about a data analyst is that you can also become a data scientist. Um, you can become a data engineer. You can become an ML engineer, but it all starts from data analyst. And so data analyst is the only role that's entry level. A data scientist is not entry level. Data engineer is not entry level. ML engineer is not entry level. They're all mid level or, of course, senior level. There's also even potentially a senior level data analyst. And so, no matter which route you want to take, you essentially the best thing to do is to start as a analyst. Again, if you don't have a sweet internship from an amazing company, if you don't have some sort of degree, like I had no college degree, if you're not going to school, the best place to start is as a data analyst because that is the entry level role for any data role. It's the only entry level role. There's also a related data analyst role which is similar. There's a lot with similar with different names, and it would be something like a BI developer, something like this. Now those potentially could be entry level, but it's basically another way to say data analyst. So it's not the same thing, but it's basically the same thing. And so if you want to become any of those, um, and potentially work fully remote, then starting off as a data analyst is the perfect way to start. And the reason is because you can always change your course after the fact. Once you get your first job, from there you can change your course into anything you want. And now, typically, I'm specializing in digital marketing. So that means Google Ads, for example. That means tracking things on Google Analytics and other ad platforms, TikTok ads, Facebook ads, Snapchat ads, whatever. And then also for e-commerce websites. So a lot of times they're tracking their ads. They're also selling things online on Shopify, on BigCommerce. Um, and yeah, so there's definitely a lot of opportunity in those spheres. You don't need any prior knowledge. You just need to learn now for about 3 months. And you can honestly start applying maybe even at the 2 month mark, once you have created just a few projects for your portfolio. One last thing is that if you want to become a business analyst, this is the wrong video for you. Business analyst is not a data analyst at all because as a data analyst, you don't necessarily have any domain knowledge on the data you're working with at all, unless you're potentially a senior data analyst where you're very intimate with the company and potentially have been there for a long time. Otherwise, you don't need to know anything really about the business domain at all, except for how to prep that data, how to find anomalies, how to show that data in a way that works. And so, obviously, there's going to be differences between healthcare data, which has a lot of legally binding private information that you need to watch for, that you need to understand what it is. There's a lot of specific healthcare file formats, for example, that you might never have heard of, versus marketing data, which comes from like Google Ads, and you need to know like the limitations of these platforms and how they work as well. But for the other than that, you don't need to know the domain knowledge of the business. That's for the business leaders, that's for the business analysts, that's for the CEO, the CTO, right? It's not really for you, especially entry level. You don't need to know that. If there are big questions that need to be asked, you're not the one that needs to essentially even ask those questions, and you don't even need to find the answer because at an entry level role, they're not going to be asking you for that answer anyway. To be honest, they are essentially going to get the data from you and then look at the questions that they have regarding their business and find the answers using your data. The number one problem is that business leaders don't have that data. That's why they hire you, is because they have a lack of visibility. And so all you need to do is give them visibility. And so one thing to keep in mind is that this video is not just shilling courses. This video is not just shilling affiliate links for a Google certificate. To be honest, getting certificates, I don't think it's even worth it. Going to college, it's not definitely not worth it. If you're already doing that, cool, but I'm not recommending that at all. So I would only say if you want to get a certificate, do it at the end of everything. So first learn everything on your own, separate from any certificate, have projects built for your portfolio, begin applying at that very moment to jumpstart your application process and interviews, because interviews themselves take multiple weeks because potentially you have two, three, four interviews for one company versus the initial recruiter or the contracted out recruiter. Then is the what is it called? Human resources team. Then is the technical team. Then is the everyone together, last final meeting. So that's four meetings for just your interview process. And that whole time you can be studying. So there's no reason to slow things down with a certificate course that's like having you study this stuff that really is not relevant for actually doing things in the real world. If you want to get a certificate, you can. I would do it at the same time, simultaneously as you're applying for jobs, work on a certificate, because at that point you need to already have your projects in line, your resume, and then once you complete that course, or I'm sorry, once you complete that certificate, you can put that in your resume and that'll make it stronger. And then from there, you can work on the next thing. You can work on an additional project that's even better. You can work on a new technology that makes the resume stronger, or you can get an additional certificate as well. Hopefully by that point, though, you've already landed your job and then you don't need to worry about that. And the reason why I say this is because the number one most important thing for you as someone that's breaking into a new industry is essentially starting that timer. And what does that mean? That means that you want to get your first job as fast as humanly possible, because that starts your timer of actual experience in the field, which is the most valuable metric. The college degree is not the most valuable metric. The certification is not. And general knowledge is obviously a critical and crucial metric, but how long you've been in the field regarding resume is the most important. Regarding resume, there's nothing about how much you actually know, right? More or less. And so, like I mentioned, this isn't about shilling certificates. So all the other videos, they're saying get this certification, do this course. It's not needed. It's not needed. There's no reason to spend that money. And honestly, it's not even about the money. It's a total waste of time. Wasting 2 weeks studying to get a job is massive when you could be doing something way more impactful for your life. And so everything that I'm going to be going over in this video, it's all completely free on YouTube that you can learn. That's how I learned myself personally. I went on YouTube. I'll be showing you the exact YouTube playlist that I worked on and studied when I learned about 2 to 3 years ago, to so that you can do the exact same thing that I did. Um, Another thing that I noticed is that a lot of the other videos, they're still recommending our programming language. And so, you know, let's see if I can do something on this flowchart. A programming language. So there's two major programming languages. There's R and there's Python. And so I don't know why people are recommending R at this point. It's 2024. It's late 2024 when I'm recording this. So it's almost 2025. And if you've never heard of AI and ML, right? AI, ML, um, you're stuck in 2020 or something because a lot of the AI stuff, it has packages only for Python. Not to mention basically everything that you're doing in R, you can more or less do in Python anyway. The community is bigger. And then just to put a final point to it, you don't even have to take my advice on this because what I would recommend is actually doing your own research yourself because everyone is essentially different with their needs. And so what you can do is basically this is what I do when I was initially trying to figure out what is the most important technologies to learn is going to Indeed, the best job website. LinkedIn is trash. Um, and all the other ones are garbage. Indeed is the best. And so you don't have to essentially choose what technologies to learn based off what YouTubers are saying. Just go to where the jobs are, what companies actually want, because in 1 year that might change, right? In 2025, maybe I'll be wrong and no one actually needs Python developers anymore because some new programming language came out. Look, that's not going to happen, but I'm only saying it to drive a point. Go to Indeed and look up for yourself. And basically, the main thing that you want to look for is search remote, obviously, because everybody wants remote. And then look at the number of jobs. And you can also look at the quality of these jobs, like what exactly they're asking for here. What does that mean? So look, let me just give you a quick search. So Python, 9,000 plus jobs. And then we look R, programming. There's 400 jobs. Now, it's not an apples to apples comparison, it's apples to orange because we threw in the word programming, but we can do Python programming, and there's 2,000 jobs with Python programming and 400 jobs with R programming. So that's like a 5x difference. And so, also to say, learn Python, don't learn R. So that's my opinion. Skip R, learn Python, database engineer, data engineer, right? Maybe even data analyst. Let's see how many jobs come up for that. Python data analyst, there's 200, and then maybe R data analyst, 400. Okay, so, maybe I'm wrong. Next year I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I still think that Python is the best. And the difficulty with R itself as a keyword is that it's one letter. So play around with that. Um, Senior data analyst. It might just be pulling, it might be skipping R. Maybe if we do put them in brackets with quotes, then it's like a required keyword string together. So if you don't have the quotations for an Indeed search, then it kind of can put these words in anywhere in the description. If you have quotes, it has to be one back to back. This might even be zero. I don't know. There's 1,000. It says junior. So R is getting auto completed to junior. So R itself is difficult to search, but I think the Python programming and R programming, it was a good comparison. The R data analyst thing having more jobs, I think might be some keyword mistake. But yeah, so that is, let me close that. And so that's why I say don't learn R, learn Python, because there's more opportunity in the data sphere to do that. And um, no one's using R. I've never worked with anyone that's using R in the digital marketing sphere. Um, so yeah. Now the next thing is essentially everything you can learn is free on YouTube, okay? Free on YouTube. So, you don't have to do any courses. And what I would search is essentially these keywords, which would be full project and then technology, learn. It's not doing it. Why isn't it doing it? Because there's quotes. Yeah, so here's what you need to search because if you want to find the best stuff for free, you can look up on YouTube and do full project technology. So full project Python, full project Excel, right? And then also full course technology. So full course Python, full course, Excel. And if you look those things up, you're going to get everything that you need, right? And to be honest with you, the full project is 10 times more valuable than the full course. The full course, it's going to be walking you through basic syntax. It's going to be talking about complex concepts in a theoretical sense. It's not that valuable. It's really not, because those complex concepts in a theoretical sense, you will forget all that information in the real world. It's never going to stay. It's never going to click. The fundamentals, the the foundation won't click unless you're actually doing projects. And so honestly, do a quick course to learn the most basic syntax, right? Have it there so you can have like in one window the basic syntax that you just copy pasted, potentially even from ChatGPT. Just say, hey, ChatGPT, what are the most basic Excel functions? Hey, what are the most basic SQL syntax I need to know, right? Or what do I need to know in SQL? Top 5 things, right? And then just copy paste that into one window. And as you're doing projects, you have your syntax right there. And the course, it's not needed. The projects are needed though. And so another thing that people are recommending is uh, mathematics, mathematics. I can't spell math, math and statistics, right? People are recommending, oh yeah, learn math and statistics. Why? Why would you learn math and statistics? Um, don't learn R, don't learn math. I spent like 2 months studying discrete mathematics, and I never use it. I couldn't even tell you what that stuff is. Yeah, you can go on Khan Academy and learn some of that stuff, and that's great and all. But to be honest with you, I never use that real world. The only thing that you need to even know is essentially the most basic mathematics that you can even think of. And so here's what you need to know: sum, max, min, average. That's basically it. This is for data visualization. You need to know the sum of some column of data. You need to know the max number of some column of data, right? That's basically it. You don't need to study statistics and mathematics hardcore like I did, which it was a waste of time, I feel like. I don't even remember the information. Now, maybe once you get to an intermediate level, if you're going for some kind of statistics and data and statistics and data science specialization, maybe at that point you would want to study this stuff. I don't know. I'm not specializing in that. I'm doing digital marketing and e-commerce. Um, and we don't really do much of that at all. The data visualization that we're doing, a lot of it, it's just looking at what the data is showing. And so let's go over that really quick, what I mean by that, because there's another misconception that I want to go over. So regarding this stuff, regarding the, learn mathematics and all this stuff, you have to keep in mind that there's there's these 4 different kinds of data analytics. And so I'm on some Harvard website or whatever, right? And so there's 4 key types of data analytics. One, descriptive analytics. It's the simplest type of analytics. And so basically what this is you are um, showing what the data is. And so it's saying, yeah, what happened, right? And so you're showing what the data is. And so basically, like I mentioned earlier, business leaders are going to want to know what their data is. They don't need you to tell them, why did something happen? They don't need you to tell them what's going to happen in the future. And they don't need you to tell them what to do in their business. What should we do next? That's not your job. As entry-level data analyst, you don't need to tell executives how to run their business. You don't need to tell like senior people how to change up their marketing campaigns. You're not there yet. And maybe you don't ever want to be there because it's a completely different role. I don't know why people are saying learn statistics, learn this crazy stuff when all you need to do is show them their data and that's it. This whole storytelling with data, I mean, it sounds kind of ridiculous to be honest. People literally just want to see their data in the simplest form possible, generally speaking, that shows them as much as like everything they need to know in the simplest form. That's it. You don't need to tell a story. This is the difference between essentially like a UX designer and a data analyst. Like I'm not here to be a UX designer. I'm here to show you your numbers so that you can see the health of your business, right? How much did you spend? How much did you make? What's the difference? How well are your ad campaigns doing? That's literally this. What happened? Here's what happened. Now, from there, the business leaders can determine after that point why that happened because you don't even have the business law knowledge. You're not procuring this ad campaign. You're not doing the market research in their domain. So you aren't going to have those answers. So you might have those answers if you become senior level. You might have those answers if you, start your own company. You might have those answers if you specialize and niche down into something really specific. But at the beginning, it's really not that important because again, they're not going to be asking you for why things happened. They're not going to be asking you for how what should we do in our business based off your this dashboard that you created, what should we do in our business? It's not a question that you need to really even be considering. Mainly just focus on getting that data clean, getting that data prepped, and getting it in there so that people can see it, because the main problem again is visibility. They don't have visibility on their business at all. They're basically looking at 20 different dashboards on 20 different websites, and you want to bring all of that into one central source of truth place so that everyone can look at it there every day, every week, every month, so they can see the health of their business. Now, that's the math and statistics that you essentially need to learn, and that's also the philosophy that I'm coming from. And so from there we can move on. So um, you know, like I mentioned, you don't need a certificate. You can build out your portfolio. That's the number one thing. Okay, so here is how I structured this. So if we do the start from no knowledge, blah, blah, then we can move down here. The first thing that I learned, I basically broke everything down into like a 1 month partition, a 1 month group. So it was Excel and Google Sheets for 1 month. And so you want to learn as much as possible in a short time, but you don't want to learn everything. You want to learn the next thing and move on. And so that's how you're going to be able to learn everything in 3 months, is because you learn basically the minimum that you need to know. But the problem is that whenever you get into a job, you're always going to be learning new things, right? But you need to show that you know something about it. And so let's just talk about Excel really quick. So the thing about Excel is that there's basically an infinite amount of things to learn. So let me pull that up. So if we look at this, whoops, if we look at this, so Excel functions. So as we can see, there's this here, or whatever, whoops, some glitch going on here. Let me here. Okay, okay, okay. So, yeah, so we're looking at this. So we have the 10 most popular functions. If we look at all the Excel functions, there's some function, if function, those are definitely important. Lookup, I've never even used that. VLOOKUP, sure, but honestly, I just use XLOOKUP instead of VLOOKUP. Match, it's pointless. Choose, it's so rarely used. So like even the most popular ones are like barely used, and I don't know how they're getting these metrics anyway. And then there's all these other ones. Compatibility, never used them. Cube, never used them. Database, never used them. Date and time, literally used like date and that's it, or date value. Engineering, never used them. Finance, never used them. Information I've used like cell and is blank, is error, stuff like that. Is number, is text. Some of those I'll use. Logical functions, yes. If and, if error, use some of those. Lookup and reference. So this might be where XLOOKUP is. Where are we at with XLOOKUP? Yeah, or what? Where is it? There we go. XLOOKUP, number one for sure. And then I don't know if there's filter. I don't know where they put that one, but that one is huge as well. So maybe we can do by alphabetical. We can just look up filter. So filter function is huge. XLOOKUP is huge. Those are like the number one and two right there. And honestly, a lot of these are pointless, totally super niche. Like I don't know, Accrint Financial. Like, I'm not a finance specialized person. Trigonometry, like, you're not going to be using most of these. So basically, learn the most prevalent, most important ones, and the playlist that I recommend. And we can go back to here. So Excel. So basically, does this work? It does not work. YouTube.com. The backslash is killing it. Okay, YouTube.com, Excel, add Excel, Google Sheets playlists. And so, yeah, that works. We can do the @ for YouTube channels, right? So I went on this guy's channel and basically they have playlists. So let me do that right now. Excel, Google Sheets. Let me go to their thing, pull it up for you.
Okay, so this will
Oh
be
gosh, there's autoplay. Okay, move that here. So this is the channel that I was learning functions on. So they have playlists. So you can go like VLOOKUP, skip that, skip VLOOKUP. Where's XLOOKUP? Maybe XLOOKUP is probably in VLOOKUP, to be honest. So let's see. Find XLOOKUP. Yeah, okay. So XLOOKUP's in here. Index and match. You can just skip that. Um, and then Google Sheets is absolutely amazing. We don't want to start this. Whoops. Let's not do that.
as
Okay.
I'm in the midst of
Oh
applying for
no,
residency.
it's spamming me. Okay. Yeah, and so basically just go here and learn if some max um click a few of these. I would say the VLOOKUP. I would say I use Google Sheets regex a lot, but the thing is that Excel doesn't have regex, so Excel is actually garbage because their regex is in beta, and so you can't use beta versions of Excel in the business world. Like you can't send beta files to boomers that, don't even know where to find their mouse, let alone their keyboard. So that's why Google Sheets is better because they have regex for one, and it's also free and way more accessible, easy to use. So, but the thing is Excel I think is better for a portfolio. It's better for a resume. Pivot tables. I really hate pivot tables, but everyone is always asking for how to use them, so learn that. Google Sheets query is huge, but it's kind of advanced, so I wouldn't learn that. Um, and then if and ifs, definitely. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just learn that, maybe click a few other ones that are interesting to you. But I can tell you that if we go to, I have a list, and so here's my notes. This essentially is like content calendar, things I would make videos about. But I'm reconsidering making videos about these because there's already a lot of videos on them, and I don't think they would do that well. But regardless of that, these are like the best things to learn. So Excel filter function, there's Excel hashtag function for dynamic arrays. So learn that syntax. When you build a table, you can use the hashtag to make it a dynamic array, which means that basically you don't have to limit it to like rows 1 through 10. It's just limit the whole column and then it'll programmatically figure out when to stop. And that's huge game changer. Um, Cannot name columns, so yeah, naming columns not that important. That's super niche. Um, I mean, it would be a great video, but it's not for like this roadmap. HStack and VStack function are really nice. Let basically turns an Excel function into a programming language where you can set variables. XLOOKUP is top tier. Pivot tables are trash. There are issues. There's so many issues with them. One thing about Excel is that you always want to double click when you first open because a lot of the times the date column is just a bunch of hashtags. And so you select all of the columns and double click them. Then if we're going to look at Google Sheets, there's even easier ways to do automation with the array formula. Even though Excel does have dynamic arrays, it's just better done in Google Sheets. The array formula, XLOOKUP, regex max, match, regex extract, and cat function, the query formula. Then there's like iterative functions with by row lambda, they go together. So basically you turn the Google Sheets fully dynamic array that, doesn't matter how many rows, it's always just programmatically doing the number of rows. Um, and you turn that into like an iterative function that does one computation on every single row that has data. So it's incredibly powerful. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And so you don't have to get that advanced with it, but I would say those are the main functions I'm using day to day that basically take data sets, cleanse data sets, and they get them ready to actually be used in dashboards. And so that's the main purpose of using these softwares is not necessarily to build charts in them because the charts that Excel has are they're turbo boomer. They're terrible. I hate them. The charts in Google Sheets are definitely easier to use, but they still suffer from the same problem of just the user interface. It's not made for that. It's really not. And so I literally just tell people, look, you want charts in Excel? We're not using it. We're using Power BI. We're using Looker Studio. Looker Studio is free. So it's a really easy sell. Say, hey, look, we don't want the charts to be in Google Sheets because it's just terrible. We're going to build the dashboard in Looker Studio instead. And pivot tables are super annoying. It's basically suffering from the same problem. There's no reason to use a pivot table when you can bring that data set into a dashboard. That's what you're going to be doing is using dashboards. And pivot tables are clunky. Pivot tables can't be exported in a clean way, meaning like the top row is not headers of column names. The top row is like blank spaces and all this stuff. So for my uses, I don't use it. I really don't. I mean, it can be good potentially, especially if you're going to be Excel heavy when you get your first data analyst job to make one project that incorporates a pivot table, incorporates a pivot chart. I would recommend that because I was using Excel day in, day out a lot more than I am now. Now I'm obviously doing more stuff in SQL with Python, but starting out, yeah, but don't go too heavy in it because it's not that good. The interface is terrible, and you're just going to be, I mean, at least for me, I was just getting pissed off at how like boomer tech it was, and so I don't really recommend that at all. Um, and one other thing is that you can use Mockaroo to essentially create fake data. So everyone's like, "Oh, go on Kaggle." It's like, I don't know. I couldn't even figure out how to sign up on Kaggle, and I'm a developer, so maybe I'm just low IQ, but I would just say go to Mockaroo and you can create your own data there. You can ask ChatGPT what's an example data set of columns, and maybe that'll create it for you nowadays too. And then you can download it. It's free for like 1,000 rows. And a lot of data sets in the real world don't even have 1,000 rows. So it's more than enough. Obviously, there's data sets which with millions of rows and all that stuff, but you don't need to really worry about that at entry level. Maybe I can just put this in here instead, like that. That's good. Okay. And so after you do 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks with Excel, Google Sheets. You build out 2 to 4 projects, and we're talking 2 to 4 projects with each technology. The next step would be SQL. So I learned SQL from a playlist, um, and here's the playlist. It was Cat. It's SQL Server tutorial for beginners. At this time, I was targeting Microsoft SQL Server, which is SSMS. It is a Microsoft product, and to be honest with you, I wouldn't necessarily recommend getting stuck in Microsoft, but it is incredibly common, and I think it is great on a resume. The problem with it is that you might get stuck with a lot of boomer tech, like legacy businesses that you won't. I mean, for me, I didn't really enjoy like working with boomer tech. So, if you don't want to learn this Microsoft product, then you can learn MySQL, which is the number one product that I'm seeing with like startups, e-commerce businesses. They're all using MySQL. There's a small number that uses Postgres as well, but I would just stick with this tutorial because all of this stuff, it's basically going to apply to MySQL with a few small differences here and there. And this playlist is absolutely amazing. So skip like maybe the first or you can do them, but the main thing is like start here, select statement, group by, joins, self join, coalesce. I mean, even this stuff is too advanced. You can do basically 20 of these tutorials, and then from there, build out some end-to-end project that incorporates SQL. You don't need to learn every version of Excel, just learn one version of Excel, whether it's Microsoft SQL Server or it's MySQL. Pick one and that's it. Don't do any other one. Um, Now I'll say this, the most common interview questions have to do with group by and having. So group by groups the data. Having essentially is a filter on the grouped data. So basically, you get your data and you have it there. Then you group it by someone's name. So you have all the sales grouped by this person's name, and then you have one row of data or multiple rows of data across time, maybe grouped by their name and a date. So basically, every single day you have people's sales by day. Then from there, because there's multiple transactions happening in one day, so you sum all of that up. So you have total revenue by day by person. Then from there, you can use having to filter by person. Having person name equal to John Smith. So having and where are the same thing, but where filters before grouping, having filters after grouping. So having I found in SQL interviews. The other one is joins. They're going to ask about joins. So let's first do group by. So they have a group by video. Watch that. They have a having difference between where and having an SQL server. Boom. Watch that. Then the next one is left join. Do they have a left join? No, but they have probably some kind of join. So here are the videos on joins. We have joins in SQL Server, advanced or intelligent joins, and self joins. So definitely just joins. Honestly, I basically only use left join. Then there's a rare occasion I'll use a cross apply or a cross join, which that's like a Cartesian product. So you take one table and another table, you take one column basically, and you put every single value like red, blue, and white. You put every single value onto every single other row on the other table, and that's what a cross apply is. So you take every value and every other value and you put them all together. So you have one, two, three, and red, white, and blue. Then you have red, one, two, three in the cross apply table that's joined. You have red, one, two, three, white, one, two, three, blue, one, two, three. And then, yeah, so inner joins. The only time I really ever use an inner join is when I'm doing like a self join. That's even more rare than that. So yeah, I mean, from a conceptual level, it might make sense to know what it is, but honestly, you basically only ever use left joins, and then a full outer join and a right join. You barely use that. Like, um, full outer join you definitely use more often than a right join, but you really never need to use a right join. There's some SQL, like SQLite, for example, it has inner join and left join, and that's it. It doesn't even have the capabilities of an outer join. It doesn't have the capabilities of a right join. So they're just not critical. And so we can put that here. So SQL, and then we'll say, do we have this playlist? Or I could just write who'd been cat, I guess, is a great who'd been cat is a great playlist. And then from here, I would say select from where group by having left join. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. Those are the most important ones. Okay, and then from here, after you study for 2 weeks, honestly, you can learn this stuff in like 2 weeks. You do a practice project that incorporates SQL. You should be good to go. Then you can go into Power BI. So actually, let me take a step back with this. So let's go back to Indeed. So there's two technologies that people are going back and forth on, and that's Power BI and Tableau. Now, personally, in the digital marketing space, e-commerce, the one that's even more common that I work with day in, day out is Looker Studio, and it's free. Power BI is not free. But the problem is that there's nothing for Looker Studio. If we look that up, there's like barely any jobs for that. Okay, dude. with the, okay, I got pinged for my IP. So there's 50 jobs for Looker Studio. For Power BI, there's 1,000, and Tableau, there's 2,000. So I think it's obvious winner Tableau. However, me personally, I'm using Power BI and Looker Studio, and there's more than enough work. Um, and I just personally not a huge fan of Tableau, and it costs an insane amount. It's like 700 per year for a license, where Power BI it's like maybe 100 per year for a license. Looker Studio is $0 per year for a license. Um, so where I'm doing like freelance contracting stuff, convincing a CEO business leader to buy Tableau licenses or something, because you need one license per person. So that's one license for the CEO, one license for me as a developer, maybe one another license for some other person to convince them to drop like a couple grand on Tableau licenses is not worth it compared to free Looker Studio or even $10 per month per user Power BI. It's still like okay, like $10, not bad, but yeah. And so that's why I'm not really personally using Tableau that much. I've used it for a few projects here and there, and to be honest, I think that a lot of these visualization platforms, they more or less are doing too much, whereas you just need the basic stuff. Everything else you want to prep beforehand. You want to prep in Excel or Google Sheets, doing the filter and the array and X lookups, building out your cleanse table beforehand, then bringing that clean data into the visualization tool. And so the fact that Tableau has like this join thing where you're bringing in, it's like Tableau prep. The fact that it has this stuff in DAX in Power BI, like that stuff, it's honestly, it's not that it's not needed. Like some of that stuff is needed depending on the use case, but the overwhelming majority of your tasks, your cleansing should be done in a SQL database or an Excel Google Sheets file. Um, because those systems that they're working in the visualization tool, they don't work that well. They really don't. They don't work nearly as well as SQL, that's for sure. So long story short, pick Power BI as the one you should learn because I said so. And so there's two really amazing Power BI guys on YouTube. So Chandu, maybe I'm saying that wrong, absolutely amazing. And then also Power BI Pro.
Hello.
These guys, absolutely amazing Power BI content. And then for Looker Studio, which I wouldn't recommend learning, but I will say that it is a absolutely amazing tool. I think it's better than Power BI. And so, you can look at this guy's channel, Loves Data. It's really great tutorials on Looker Studio and Google Analytics. So it kind of goes hand in hand with digital marketing. So if you want to niche into digital marketing, definitely learn Looker Studio. If you don't want to niche in digital marketing, then learn Power BI. And if you don't want to take my advice, then just learn Tableau because I don't know, go for it. Now, the next thing you also obviously want to understand for digital marketing specifically, you want to understand Google Analytics. So this is a great segue for this guy's channel. Look at Google Analytics tutorial. Try to set your own thing up. Look at Google Ads tutorial. This one, I don't think you will be able to set up as easily. And then Google Tag Manager, you don't necessarily need to learn, mainly just GA4, it's in every business basically, and Google Ads, it's in every business basically as well. And then Facebook ads would also be a great thing to learn too, just to have a little bit more knowledge of different ad platforms. The next thing that you want to learn, and so that would take 2 weeks. So just to recap, we have 2 weeks on Excel, Google Sheets, 2 weeks on Power BI, 2 weeks on, or maybe even like 1 week on Google Analytics 4. Let's see, so we can do let me just get some text. So we have 2 weeks, 2 to 4, we could say 2 to 4 weeks on this because it's pretty, there's a lot to go over for this. I think I did 4 weeks actually, so we can just say 4 weeks, or we'll say 2 to 4 weeks. 2 to 4 weeks, and then can I copy and paste this? Yes. And then 2 to 4 weeks on SQL, and then we can delete that. And then we also want to do from SQL, we can do GA4, Google Ads. So like domain knowledge. Um, so there we go. It's like 1 to 2 weeks for this, 1 to 2 weeks. And then the last thing to learn is, of course, the thing that you have been waiting for, which is Python. And so the best place to learn Python is Corey Schaefer. That's where I learned it. Also, I did buy like a $10 course. Um, I can't remember what it was, but it was pretty good. There's also Python games that you can do, which are really good. There's also Leet Code, of course, which is really great. So um, all that stuff is great. It should be the last technology that you study though, because you're not even going to be using it in your job as entry-level data analyst. You're not going to be using it. So, there's almost no reason to learn it other than to essentially build your resume to look good. So do Python full course, Python full project, right? So look up full project and, you know, there you go. Tech with Tim probably is an amazing project. He has a bunch of project videos. Of course, he's great with Python. There's also another amazing channel with Python um, from I think he's like this Austrian guy, and he's not popping up here, I guess. But okay, now we're getting into other stuff. Yeah, and so that should be good. So learn the syntax. For me, I didn't have any prior coding knowledge, so learning Python was incredibly difficult, actually. I was very confused at the concepts and how it worked, but now I'm really good with it. And so it just takes time. Some core concepts that I use as a data analyst is essentially extracting data from APIs. Whoops. Um, Cleaning with pandas or prepping. I said prepping with pandas. So extracting data from APIs is basically if you have a CRM and you want to get the CRM's data, you have to basically use Python to make a script, code up something in Python to get the data from the API. Then you get the data in your Python program. You need to kind of work with that data to make it into a table format, basically a CSV. Then once it's in a CSV format, you can save that CSV using pandas, or you can upload that CSV to like cloud service, something like that. And you can do with Python, you can also learn AWS or GCP, a little bit of that. AWS, GCP, Azure. So when I first started, I picked Azure to learn because I think I was targeting Microsoft stack companies, Power BI, Excel, Azure, SSMS. But honestly, nowadays I'm using GCP way more. I'm working with startups. I'm working with digital marketing companies that are already more embedded in the Google suite of things anyway. So personally, I would recommend GCP. However, AWS is more popular technically. Azure, I would only recommend if you're targeting a Microsoft stack. And so you can learn stuff like virtual machine in the cloud. You can learn cloud functions, and you can learn how to integrate with cloud data warehouse. So like BigQuery for Google. And so basically what I was saying with pandas though is you can take the data that's in a JSON format from the API, make it into a CSV, then upload that CSV into your cloud storage provider. Then, or you can take that flattened data and just load it straight into BigQuery, which I actually made a video on. And then the other thing that you want to learn is potentially Python with the Google Sheets API, if you want to do that, or Python with uh, BigQuery API. working with SQL within Python, it's pretty common as well. Um, so those are some great ideas for potentially like one or two Python projects for your resume is right there. Um, and then Corey Schaefer is great for learning basic syntax. And then you can also look up a free Python game to also get that syntax going, or Leet code. And so let me just write that down. So Python free game or Leet code for syntax, right? Then on top of that, potentially you want to learn Git, but honestly, it's almost not needed. Um, we can do learning with these under learning. And so learning Git is important and all, but it's not that critical. You basically, no one's going to interview you um, on Git commands. They're basically just going to ask like, hey, do you know Git? And that's basically it. And you just say yes because you know Git, and that's all. It's hard for my brain to wrap around Git sometimes, to be honest with you, but I think it's a good thing to know. Every company is using it, and it's good to be familiar with that technology so you understand what it is. Now, other than that, I wouldn't worry about it. You can learn it way later after you have secured your first job. Um, and after Git, you can essentially start doing certificates, like I was saying, right? Um, you can do the certificates, but after you have two to four practice projects in Excel, two to four practice projects showcasing SQL, two to four, or like one practice project with using Google Analytics for, two to four practice projects with Python. Then from there, get your certificate, like the Google Specialty Data Analyst certificate, something like that. Um, there's also one thing to note is that there's technologies that you want to avoid learning from wasting your time that are recommended in some similar videos. And so it goes back to, did I put notes for this? Yeah, it goes back to here. And so if we look at here, we have data analyst and BI developer, but then we have data scientist, data engineer, ML engineer. And so um, you don't really need to learn stuff that's too advanced. And so let me go back to data engineer. So there's stuff like Spark, and Hadoop. And then there's stuff like uh, TensorFlow. Like these things are highly advanced technologies that there's no reason for you to start learning now, especially if you don't have any experience, you don't have a degree, right? You're not specializing in those yet. You need to become a normal data analyst first, get experience in the real world, working with this data day in, day out. Then eventually, over a long period of time, then you can potentially get into big data, doing distributive compute with Spark, or working with ML or AI, building a RAG, like, or RAG system, right? Like AI stuff. And then data scientist is like, I would put statistics under that, right? So like doing stats. Like these things, they're highly specialized stuff. So I wouldn't worry about that. Mainly just Excel to get your first job. Excel is great. You can start off on Upwork, you can start off doing Excel projects. It's like the most lowest barrier to entry. You can do data entry or yeah, data entry or like data validation and charge like $5 per hour, $10 per hour. My first job on Upwork, I think I charged $5 per hour and probably got paid like 20 bucks. And it was Excel. So you can start getting real world experience. It's the easiest foot in the door using Excel, right? Now, that being said, you can also charge over $100 per hour working on Excel, Excel only. So, yeah, these tools are shiny and cool, but honestly, it's not needed. If you want to get into an industry that is going to be very fruitful for you. Stick with Excel, stick with Google Sheets, learn that, get some really good practice projects. Then once you have that, honestly, at that point, start learning SQL and then start applying. You should really be applying at like honestly before even I did at like the 2 month mark. You should be applying for jobs on Indeed every single day. And at the time, I actually created a Python bot that would apply to jobs for me. I would click the uh, two-factor authentication. I would open my email, click that in, and then I would pause the program. And then once I loaded the page, I was using Python and Selenium. Once I loaded the page, I would then hit start on the program manually, and then it would go through every single job and apply to jobs for me. And I did that essentially as like a pet project, as well. But that's all to say is that you need to be applying to Indeed jobs every single day. And so, LinkedIn is great too if you have connections. And if you're like a more mid-level or senior level, I think there's better opportunities on LinkedIn. But for entry level, Indeed is the place where you want to go. So apply every single day. You don't need to be a master at Python because you're not going to use it. So learn Python last. Get certificates even after you learn Python, even after you have Python projects in your portfolio. After you learn Excel and have projects, after you learn SQL and have projects, that's when you need to start applying for jobs immediately. And so that's the complete roadmap for a data analyst for digital marketing. Of some of the most common functions that I use. So let me pull that up really quick and I can actually show you in my notes app. Just give me a sec.